I never told my boyfriend that I make over $40,000 a month as a venture capital fund director. He only knew me as an analyst assistant who lived simply. He always saw my quiet apartment, my practical car, and my simple wardrobe, and he assumed I was just doing okay. When his entire family, the Beacon Hill, old money elite, invited me to their private, members-only club in Boston, I knew exactly what I was walking into. I wanted to see how his parents would treat someone they thought was a nobody, someone they assumed was beneath their station. But the moment that door closed behind me, I didn't get to find out, because less than an hour later, I was standing outside in the cold. My mother, the family matriarch, sent the text message. It wasn't a typo or a slip of the tongue. It was a cold, deliberate, one-sentence execution notice, announcing that because of my toxic resentment, they were cutting me out of their lives, effective immediately. I didn't cry. I didn't text back. I didn't throw my phone. I just sat there in the blue light of my monitor and stared at the final act of cruelty, a little orange heart my brother, Zachary, had left on the message. That's when I realized my anger wasn't loud or hot this time. It was clinical. It was quiet. It was focused. I set my phone down, walked to my desk, and opened my laptop. I opened a single file, one I looked at every single month, a password-protected Excel sheet. The file name was simple, Family Support Ledger. My fingers moved quickly across the keys. I scrolled down the columns, looking at 5 years of financial data. Row 1, Richard and Elizabeth, my parents. Beacon Hill mortgage. Monthly payment, $6,000. I clicked the auto payment link to my bank. Cancel. Row 2, Zachary, Audi Q5 lease. Monthly payment, $800. Cancel. Row 3, Elizabeth, Amex bill. Monthly payment, variable, usually around $3,000. Cancel. Row 4, Richard, Somerset Club dues. Quarterly payment, $4,000. Cancel. I looked at the clock on my screen, 11:58 p.m. In the span of 12 minutes, I had financially severed myself from the family that had just text messaged me out of their lives. You have to understand, I wasn't just helping them, I was a silent, unacknowledged investor. I'd been keeping their entire world afloat for half a decade. I'd spent over $380,000 of my own income supporting a lifestyle they hadn't earned and couldn't afford. They thought they were punishing me by cutting me off, but they had just walked onto the plank of their own sinking ship. And now, the bilge pumps were off. They just didn't know it yet. This didn't start overnight. It started 5 years ago, the moment I made partner at Nova Capital, my venture capital firm. I was flying high, managing a portfolio worth over $100 million, making more money than my father, a corporate lawyer, ever had. Then, I got the call from Richard. He sounded broken. The family's old money law firm was failing. They were 3 months behind on the mortgage for the Beacon Hill house, the house I grew up in. They were going to lose it. He asked me for help, just until I get back on my feet. So, I did what I thought a good daughter should do. I took over the payments. I saved their home. I thought it was my duty, the price of being the responsible one in the family. But getting back on his feet never seemed to happen. The mortgage payment just became expected. It didn't stop at the mortgage. A year later, it was Zachary. He needed a reliable car to get to his new job that he would quit in 3 months. I co-signed the lease, and when he forgot the first 2 payments, I just added it to the autopay ledger. Then it was my mother, Elizabeth. Rachel, darling, the club dues. It's just so important for your father's networking. Then, her Amex bill, which she used for family expenses, dinners I was never invited to, clothes I never saw. It's strange how cruelty works when it's normalized. No one ever asked me for $380,000 at once. It was always 1,000 small cuts, just this month. You're so successful, it's nothing to you. It's just what family does for each other. It becomes a trap. I kept my actual success a secret because in my family, if you're too successful, you become a threat, or, in my case, a utility. It was easier to let them think I was just a low-level assistant, just doing okay, because if they knew I was a managing director, they would have asked for more. I got so used to the small hurts that I stopped recognizing them as abuse, seeing it only as the cost of admission, the price of their conditional love. That night, after 5 years, I finally saw the truth. They hadn't cut me off because I was toxic, they cut me off because I was inconvenient, and they thought they were done using me. The alarm went off at 7 a.m. I hadn't slept. I'd just watched the sunrise over the Boston Harbor. At 8:01 a.m., the storm hit. My phone, which had been silent all night, exploded. A text from Elizabeth. My card was declined at the club. This is humiliating. Fix this now. A text from Richard, posted to the family Facebook group. It is a sad day when a child forgets the sacrifices a parent made for them. Some people are just ungrateful. And then, a text from Zachary, the one who had hearted the initial message. Hey, I think you're overreacting. Mom's just upset. You can't just cut us off like this. Why don't you just call them and make peace? I stated his message. I wasn't even angry at him. I just felt pity. Zachary isn't evil. He's just weak. He's lived his entire life in a prison built by our parents' expectations and their financial dependency. He was experiencing what psychologists call learned helplessness. His text wasn't about making peace. It was the sound of a man terrified that the system supporting him was about to collapse. He wasn't my brother in that moment. He was just another link in their invisible, failing chain. I didn't reply. I didn't answer a single text. I showered, got dressed in my sharpest dark navy Armani suit, and went to work at my office on the 40th floor. I didn't go to my desk. I went straight to the legal department. Julia, one of the firm's top attorneys and an old friend from college, looked up from her desk. Rachel, you look focused. What's wrong? I need you to draft a letter for me, I said. As a private matter, but I want it on Nova Capital letterhead. I sat down, pulled out my phone, and emailed her the password-protected Excel file, the family support ledger. Her eyes widened as she scrolled through the tabs. 5 years of payments, month by month. She looked at the total at the bottom, $380,000. They call me the family problem, I said, my voice even. I call myself their chief investor, and I'm calling in the debt. Julia's expression hardened. She went from friend to lawyer in a split second. I'll have it ready in an hour. The letter she drafted was a work of art, cold, factual, and lethal. It was addressed to Mr. Richard and Mrs. Elizabeth. It outlined the full sum of $380,000, categorized as non-gift financial support. It formally notified them that all future aid had been terminated, and it gave them exactly 30 days to contact Julia to initiate a formal repayment plan. If they failed to respond, we would immediately move to place a lien on the Beacon Hill property to secure my investment. I signed it, put it in a courier envelope, and had it sent directly to their house. The rest of the day was quiet. Too quiet. I worked through my meetings with a sharp, detached focus. The pitch went well. The budget was balanced. But underneath it all, I felt the hum of a different kind of calculation, the 30-day clock on that legal letter. In the late afternoon, my private line rang. It was Julia. That was fast, I said, picking up. Did they already call you? Are they caving? Rachel. Julia's voice was different. The friendly, professional tone was gone, replaced by something hard. You need to come back to my office right now. What's wrong? Just come. Don't call them. Don't text anyone. Just get here. She hung up. When I walked in, Julia was standing by her window, holding a stack of papers. When you prepare a property lien, she said, not turning around, you have to pull the full title history, see what other debts are attached to the asset. She turned and dropped the papers on her desk. 6 months ago, Richard took out a second mortgage on the Beacon Hill house, a home equity line of credit for $100,000. He what? He never told me. He would have to. I would have had to sign. Julia looked at me, her eyes filled with a lawyer's pity, which is the worst kind. That's just it, Rachel. You did. She pushed the top document across the desk. It was the loan application. And there, at the bottom, next to Richard's looping, arrogant signature, was mine. Or, rather, a clumsy, desperate attempt at mine. He forged your signature, Julia said. He stole $100,000 of equity from a property you were actively paying the mortgage on. I sat down. My legs suddenly felt weak. This wasn't just being ungrateful. This wasn't just insults behind my back. This was a felony. It gets worse, Julia said, sitting across from me. I know where the money went. She showed me the transfer records. The $100,000 wasn't spent on a vacation. It was wired directly into the operating account for his failing law firm. His firm wasn't just failing, Rachel, Julia said gently. It was drowning. He was taking your monthly mortgage payments with one hand while simultaneously stealing your equity with the other, just to keep his own sinking ship afloat. And just like that, everything clicked into place. The text message cutting me off wasn't a random emotional outburst. It was a calculated decision. Richard knew the bank statements for the new loan would be coming. He had to get rid of me. He had to sever the relationship, declare me not family, so that when I discovered the theft, he could paint me as a bitter, vindictive outsider. He wasn't just cutting me off. He was cleaning up a crime scene. I looked at Julia. The shock was gone. The hurt was gone. All that was left was a cold, quiet clarity. He didn't just make a mistake, I said. He committed fraud. Yes, Julia said. Against you, and against the bank. What do you want to do? I thought about his Facebook post. Some people forget who raised them. I thought about the years I spent making myself smaller, quieter, more useful, just hoping for a scrap of approval. I stood up and smoothed the front of my suit. He's not just my father anymore, Julia. He's a liability to my asset. I want you to call the bank's fraud department. And I want you to call the State Bar Association. I want you to report him. Julia nodded slowly. This will destroy his career. He'll be disbarred. He could face jail time. I know, I said, walking to the door. But as he's so fond of saying, it's just what family does for each other. I walked out and let the legal machine take over. I had given up on love, but I would have just as that it took 3 days for the other shoe to drop. I was working from my apartment, finalizing a deal for a new AI startup. The city was quiet. Then, my intercom buzzed. Not a call to my phone, but a frantic buzz from the lobby. My doorman's voice came through. Miss Rachel, a woman named Elizabeth is here. She seems very distressed. Let her up, I said, and closed my laptop. I walked to the door and waited. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't angry. I felt nothing. It was the calm of a balance sheet finally adding up to 0. The elevator chimed. I heard footsteps, fast and uneven, running down the hall. Then, a desperate pounding on my door. I opened it. It was Elizabeth. But this wasn't the cold, polished matriarch from Beacon Hill. Her hair was a mess. Her eyes were red and swollen, and the expensive cashmere coat she wore was buttoned wrong. Rachel, she gasped, pushing past me into the apartment. Oh, Rachel. Thank God. You have to help us. I closed the door slowly. Help you with what, Elizabeth? The bank. They're there for closing. They're taking the house. Richard, your father, he made a mistake. A terrible mistake. She was sobbing now, grabbing my arm. He didn't know what he was doing. You have to call them. You're in finance. You can fix this. Tell them you'll pay. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. I let her talk, letting her spin the entire story of his confusion and his mistake. When she finally paused, I spoke. My voice was quiet. He didn't make a mistake, Elizabeth. He committed a crime. Her hand dropped from my arm. What? What are you talking about? The $100,000 loan, I continued, my voice still perfectly level. The one he took out 6 months ago. The one he forged my signature on to get. Her face went completely white. She knew. Of course, she knew. That wasn't a mistake, I said, walking toward my desk. That was fraud. And the mortgage payments I made after he stole from me? That was just covering his tracks. Please, she whispered, her voice cracking. Rachel, please. It's your family. It's your home. You can't just let them take it. Do something. Oh, I already have, I said. I picked up a single thick envelope and held it out to her. She looked at it, confused. What? What is this? That, I said, is the official notice of foreclosure. The bank isn't taking the house, Elizabeth. She ripped open the envelope, her hands shaking as she pulled out the legal documents. Her eyes scanned the first page. I watched her face as she read the name of the new primary creditor, the entity that had bought the debt from the bank. I said. I'm taking the house. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with a horror that was almost satisfying. I've been paying for it for 5 years. I might as well own it. You and Richard have 30 days to vacate the property. My property? No, she breathed. No, you can't. You wouldn't. You cut me out, I said, walking to the door and opening it. You texted me at 11:51 at night to tell me I wasn't family. You were right. I'm not. I'm just your creditor. She stumbled out into the hallway, still whispering no, and I closed the door, shutting out the sound. I leaned against the wood, listening to her footsteps fade away. This wasn't revenge. It was a counting point. 6 months passed. The legal storm had come and gone. Richard's career evaporated. He was disbarred within weeks and eventually pleaded guilty to felony fraud to avoid a trial. The Beacon Hill house, the one I had saved, was sold. The proceeds were wired to my account. Every cent, the $380,000 from my ledger and the $100,000 he had stolen. Elizabeth had moved into a small rental apartment across the river, taking a job as a receptionist. Zachary had to get 2 jobs to cover his own car payments and rent. This morning, I sat at my desk looking out over the Boston Harbor. I opened that password-protected file, the family support ledger, one last time.